It was a gray Monday morning in Chicago, the kind of day where the cold wind felt like it could slice through ambition. Emily Turner, 28, sat on the edge of her small apartment bed, clutching her coffee mug like it was her only source of warmth. The city outside buzzed with life, people hustling, cars honking, but inside her heart, there was only noise and doubt. She had been working as an assistant in a downtown marketing firm for nearly 5 years. Despite her dedication, she was constantly overlooked. Promotions passed her by, her ideas were brushed aside in meetings, and even when she stayed late to finish projects others abandoned, no one seemed to notice. The office was full of loud voices and bigger egos, people who thrived on attention. Emily, quiet and hardworking, was often invisible. During lunch breaks, she'd sit with a few co-workers who loved gossip more than growth. "Emily, you're too serious," one of them teased between bites of salad. "You need to chill. Life isn't all about goals and hustle," another added with a smirk. "Maybe stop dreaming so big. Not everyone's meant to be a boss." Emily forced a polite smile, but their words cut deep. That evening, she walked home under the dim orange glow of the streetlights, wondering if they were right. Maybe she was dreaming too big. Maybe some people were just meant to stay in the background. But as she unlocked her apartment door, she paused. The silence of her small space greeted her, and for the first time, it felt peaceful, not lonely. She dropped her bag, sat on the couch, and stared out the window at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, people were chasing their dreams fearlessly. Why couldn't she? She opened her journal and began to write not about what she didn't have, but about what she wanted. From today, she wrote, "I focus on me. No more seeking approval. No more explaining my vision. I'll build quietly and shock them all." That night, Emily deleted her social media accounts, unplugged her phone, and went to bed with a strange new feeling, purpose. The city outside roared on, but inside that tiny apartment, a quiet revolution had begun. 6 months had passed since Emily Turner decided to focus solely on herself. It was winter in Chicago, and while most people dreaded the snow, Emily found comfort in its stillness. Each morning, before the sun even rose, she laced up her worn sneakers and went for a jog around Grant Park. The icy air bit her cheeks, but she didn't care. That early solitude made her feel alive, like she was slowly rebuilding the version of herself she had always wanted to be. After her morning run, she'd return to her apartment, make oatmeal and coffee, then spend 20 quiet minutes journaling. Her entries were no longer filled with complaints or doubts, they were filled with plans, progress, and gratitude. "Discipline over motivation," she often wrote, reminding herself that consistency mattered more than inspiration. Her days were packed. She worked full-time at the marketing firm but no longer wasted time chatting or scrolling during breaks. Instead, she read books on business strategy, listened to podcasts about entrepreneurship, and watched online courses every evening after work. While her coworkers gathered for drinks or watched Netflix, Emily sat at her small wooden desk, learning how to build an online business. At first, it was lonely. There were nights when her eyes burned from staring at her laptop, nights when self-doubt whispered, "What if you're wasting your time?" But Emily had learned to silence that voice. She would glance at the vision board on her wall, a collage of inspiring quotes, financial goals, and travel dreams, and push through. On weekends, she recorded short motivational videos for TikTok. Even though barely anyone watched them, she created digital planners and uploaded them to an online marketplace, hoping they would reach people who needed structure in their lives like she once did. Her first sale, a simple $4 download, brought tears to her eyes. It wasn't about the money. It was proof that her focus was paying off. By spring, something had changed in Emily. Her posture was stronger, her confidence visible in every step. The same co-workers who once mocked her now whispered, "What's gotten into her?" They couldn't see it yet, but Emily knew she was becoming unstoppable. The world still didn't notice her transformation, and that was fine. because Emily wasn't doing it for them anymore. She was doing it for herself. By the time summer rolled around in Chicago, Emily Turner's quiet grind had begun to bear fruit. Her small online business, which she had started in her tiny apartment corner, was finally taking off. What began as selling a few digital planners on Etsy turned into a full-fledged brand. Focus Go, a line of productivity, tools, and motivational resources designed for women who wanted to rebuild their lives just like she had. It started slowly. One day she woke up to find her inbox filled with orders after a lifestyle influencer mentioned her products on Instagram. Her Etsy shop, which once averaged a few sales a week, suddenly had hundreds of purchases. Her heart raced as she refreshed the screen over and over, tears filling her eyes. It was the validation she never asked for but deeply needed. Meanwhile, at her office job, the same coworkers who used to tease her began to act differently. They whispered when she walked by, noticing how her energy had shifted. Emily carried herself differently now, calm, confident, focused. One afternoon, during a team meeting, her manager asked her to share some insights on digital marketing. For the first time in years, her voice carried authority. Everyone listened. That same week, she received an invitation to speak at a Women in Business networking event in downtown Chicago. She almost said no out of fear, but something inside told her this was her moment. On the day of the event, dressed in a simple black suit, she stood in front of a crowd of 50 women and shared her story, not as someone who made it, but as someone still climbing. Her honesty struck a chord. People lined up afterward just to thank her. Days later, she made a bold decision. She quit her job. When she handed her resignation letter to her boss, his eyes widened. "You're leaving. Why now?" Emily smiled softly. "Because I'm finally working for myself." That evening, as the city lights reflected off Lake Michigan, she sat by her window with a cup of tea, watching her online store hit $100,000 in total sales. The woman who once felt invisible was now unstoppable. She didn't brag, didn't post a thing online. She simply whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." Her heart pounding not from fear, but from gratitude. The bright stage lights spilled through the curtains as hundreds of people filled the seats. The event host introduced her as one of the most inspiring self-made women in America. Emily took a deep breath, adjusted her blazer, and smiled. It still felt surreal. Just a few years ago, she had been sitting in a cramped Chicago apartment, crying over a job that didn't value her. Now she owned a thriving business. Her brand had been featured in magazines, and her motivational videos reached millions of women online. But for Emily, none of that mattered as much as the journey itself, the quiet mornings, the lonely nights, the countless moments of doubt that she turned into determination. As she walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. She waved humbly and began her speech. "A few years ago," she said, her voice steady, "I was chasing everyone's approval, my boss, my friends, even strangers on social media. I thought validation meant success. But then I realized something powerful. People notice eventually, but by then, you don't need them to." The crowd fell silent, hanging onto every word. Emily shared her story, the long nights studying, the failed attempts, the laughter she endured at work, and the strength she built in silence. She reminded them that progress is never loud. It's the quiet commitment to yourself that creates the loudest impact later. Emily smiled, but deep down, she knew the real applause had come long before. On those lonely mornings when she chose discipline over doubt, the city lights sparkled around her. She looked up at the skyline, feeling the wind brush her face, and whispered, "You did it." Her journey had come full circle from invisible to inspirational. But Emily didn't see it as the end. She saw it as a new beginning, a reminder to the world that when you focus on yourself, stay consistent, and move in silence, You don't just succeed, you shock everyone.